You're watching Let the Quran Speak. U.S. President Obama recently announced that his tax policies stem from his religious beliefs. Now, Brother Shabir, the question is, does Islam also have this emphasis on social responsibility and caring for the vulnerable? And let's talk about that a little.
Yes, definitely. And of course, one doesn't have to restrict oneself to religious thinking. It's just a moral principle that human beings have to show compassion for things around them, for people, for plants, for animals, for the environment. This is just, it's ingrained in human beings.
And particularly for those who are vulnerable or, they're weaker for some reason.
Exactly. So where Islam comes in here is with its unique emphasis on charity we have the specific requirement that the Muslim must give 2.5% of his net liquefiable assets on an annual basis. And this makes it a cornerstone of the faith. It's one of the pillars of the faith. Islam is said to be built on 5 pillars, and the zakat or charity is one of those pillars. And of course, it doesn't end there. That's just the basic required amount, but that is there to emphasize that this is a necessary requirement, and once the avarice is broken in a person by his very effort to fulfill this pillar of the faith, then it is expected that the Muslim will be continually generous and will give more and more out of the favors that God has bestowed on him or her.
Mm-hmm. Barack Obama mentioned 2 statements, I guess, from the Bible. And one was, love thy neighbor as thyself. And for whom much is given, much shall be required. Is there something like this within the Islamic religious tradition as well?
Yes, it is mentioned that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother that which he loves for himself. And the term here, akhi, his brother, here is very broad. It doesn't necessarily mean brother in the faith, but it could be brother in humanity, because all we believe are children of Adam, so we're all related in this way. So the emphasis on charity and on giving to others is very clear in that prophetic saying. There is also a mention in the Quran as a description of the believers, يُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. They prefer others above themselves, even if poverty is their lot. So we don't even only demand of the rich that they should be charitable to others, but the Quran is saying that even the poor person, the Muslim believer, even though he or she is poor, prefers others above themselves, and that's a natural response expected from the faith community.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is the reason for giving? Is it for love of God, or is there some sort of benefit to the particular individual who's giving? What are the reasons given?
It is both. In terms of love of God, the Quran speaks about believers giving charity ala hubbi, as is mentioned, and that's the terminology used in the Quran, and that could mean out of the love of God, that people give charity out of the love of God, or it could mean that they give charity despite their love for the wealth. But many other passages of the Quran support the idea that believers do things out of the love of God, seeking the face of God, seeking the good pleasure of God, and so on. In terms of the cure for oneself, the term zakat that is used for charity as a pillar of Islam refers to purification. And the Muslim scholars explain that the appropriateness of that term is that on the one hand, we cleanse the wealth, because in earning wealth, sometimes there's a gray area. And you accumulate things which are not rightfully yours. But by giving it away in charity, you are in a way of freeing yourself of any sort of thing that surreptitiously got into become part of your wealth that's not really truly yours. Secondly, you are purifying yourself, because human beings have that greed, which is called shuh in Arabic, avarice, the desire to get more and accumulate, and so say mine, mine. By giving away in charity, you're breaking that, and so you're cleansing your own mind of that negative sort of belief. And the Quran says, وَمَنْ يُوكَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And those who have been saved from their own avarice, these are the ones who are ultimately successful.
Mm-hmm. Now, many religious institutions in the past were at the forefront of social services and helping the vulnerable and the poor. And with the advent of the welfare state, that has changed. The government now does that. So what role do religious institutions and perhaps religious individuals have to play?
Well, there's still a great role for charity that is not government-based, because at that massive level, sometimes the smaller things are overlooked. So the government will enact policies to deal with general situations. But individuals will come across real individual situations that they can deal with and they can help out with. So charitable work has continued in many of the developing countries, and almost all of the developing countries, to supplement the government programs. Now, if you think of the third world and underdeveloped countries, definitely there is a greater need for charitable work to be done. And so Muslims and others in places like Canada, where we are enjoying the great good that God has given us, have a great moral obligation to go to those poorer countries with some of our wealth and to spend it there to help those people who are suffering and who do not have the handouts from their governments that would be sufficient to meet even some of the most basic needs of life.
Mm-hmm. Is it also a responsibility of religious individuals to enjoin the government to take action to help the poor in situations where perhaps the government is reneging on its duty?
Definitely, because there are so many pressures on governments and so many demands on the limited funds that naturally, as they say, the squeaky hinge is the one that gets the grease. Mm-hmm. And people are lobbying for all sorts of things that are important to them. People of religion should lobby for the poor, because the poor should be that which is most important to us. We have already so much that we're enjoying. We have bread on the table and the butter. And there are some people who have neither the bread nor the butter. And so we should be lobbying on behalf of them, because they do not even have a voice, and we have that voice.
All right. Thank you for that, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break, and when we return, we answer questions we've received from you, our viewers.